Hey guys, Bobby Rio here, and I got a special guest with me, Christian Hudson from The Social Man. We've been hanging out. He actually lives about 20 minutes from me, and don't get into the city nearly as much as I should. But every time we get together, man, we just have the best conversations. Whether we're talking game or just business, it's cool stuff. And today we got to talking about text message, which you've always had interesting perspective on it, and kind of I know you're always on it and kind of giving me some of the stuff you've done. So we figured we'd bring out the camera and
just whip it out.
Just whip
and talk to what I wanted to talk about today is like I think and thanks by the way for having me. One of the interesting things about text messaging to me, and if you're one of these guys, then this is why I'm sitting here talking to you right now. A lot of my friends, they're decent at getting numbers, and then they want to get dates. And I keep telling them, dude, like you got to use text messaging. Like you gotta make use of text messaging. And they're like, nah, it's a pain in the ass. Like I don't know. I just call the girl up and I just push for the date. And if that's where your head is at, then that's what we're going to talk about today. The way that I look at text messaging is, and some of my buddies are in the world of finance. So in the world of finance, you have an asset, right? And you can leverage that asset. An example of this would be if you have a home and you've paid off 50%, you can pull out a bunch of money and buy a pool with it or something. So that's leveraging that asset properly. A phone number, every phone number you get, even email addresses and whatnot, those are assets.
Yeah.
And you can leverage it properly, or you can let it decline in value. And if you have good text messaging, then it's going to increase in value dramatically. And if you're not good at text messaging, then it's going to drop in value dramatically. And that's, to me, like such a fundamentally important way of looking at text messaging that I think a lot of guys just don't really consider,
Yeah, I'm self-concept. I'm not good with text. It's like I never developed that skill. And I remember back before I met my girlfriend, when I was meeting a lot of girls, the two things that I was horrible at was instant messaging and text messaging.
Right.
And it was so frustrating because I had some friends who they weren't meeting nearly as many girls, but they were able to close the deal with the ones they were meeting so much more because they would just get them on instant messenger or they would get on a text chat, and next thing you know, they're already at a sexual level with these girls before even the first date, whereas I'm sitting there for 3-4 weeks trying to get them out on the phone or sending them an email. And like you said, this idea of it being an asset versus with me it was a liability, where their value was, with a smaller number of girls, was actually their closing percentage was a lot better.
Right, exactly. So that's really the key point of it. And that's just the message I really want to get across here is, when you get that number, the important thing is really just how am I going to work to increase the value of this number so that by the time I go on that date, there's so much that has transpired between the two of us that she's really getting excited about me, and the first date feels like the second or third to her. As we sit down and record this, I'm recently in a new relationship, and it was funny because we started actually emailing when I was out in California, and we exchanged some long emails and kind of went into texting, and it was like literally by the time we were on our first date, there were so many things that we were like, oh, we have this in common, like, oh, we've got to do this. We went into our first date with a list of things that we needed to do. Like, we were like, and one of them was eat sushi. So, like, our first date was like, going out to eat sushi. But yeah, we went into that first date with like a list of so many things that we wanted to do. And, everybody has their own way of approaching dating and all that. And I usually
really weird things on that list?
Weird things on the list. Well, nothing that we haven't done already that there aren't videos that I can release to you. No, I'll, if you want to see the videos and you want to pay a small price for them, then no. But yeah, that's again just really the key point, and it's such a little mindset tweak. Obviously, you've got a whole bunch of great links stuff about texting here. We've got all sorts of great things that you've been sharing with these guys. But I really wanted to make sure that if somebody wasn't thinking about text messaging the right way and they weren't seeing this phone number as an asset, that they start looking at it that way. Because again, by the time it's like, again, it's just investment principle. If you put some money into something, and it's a good asset, it's going to grow. If you put some energy into this number, it's going to grow, and the value of that asset, which is really the relationship, is going to grow. And that's where text messaging allows you to leverage that gap between when you get that number and when you see her again, and just grow that relationship dramatically. And that's basically my dorky investment analysis of text messaging.
And like I said earlier, texting isn't my specialty. And one of the reasons I created the site was to learn myself, to kind of force myself
to get better at it.
And I recommend Before You Text a lot on that site, because that's where I learned from. And I know you're familiar with the product too.
Just a little bit.
And what's your opinion on how something like that can help a guy, and what does it offer?
Yeah, well, specifically, we've just touched on the surface here, but there's so many techniques in that are just like mind-blowingly good for basically like building that relationship. Whether it's damage control from the girl not wanting to get back to you, to like, I don't know, like. She's not writing back, she flakes, so all the bad stuff I know Riz talks about. And like all the great stuff too, just how to make her laugh, and like, funny ways to ask her out, and so many little ways of distinguishing yourself. And it's been like a huge learning thing for me, even as I've been a part of it. So yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. And it was my experience. Let me put it this way. It was my experiences with text messaging that I learned from that got me to seeing it in the way that I do, and making it such an integral part of my game, if you would like to call it that.
Definitely, and I do highly recommend it. If you look at like the business thing of assets and liabilities, purchasing something like Before You Text Her for $50. When I look back, 5-6 years ago, and I was going through that period where my friends who were good at this were closing the deal, whereas I'm going out blowing money at different bars and whatnot, and coming home and not turning nearly as many of them as I should have into hookups or whatever. So yeah, in that perspective, I agree that it's an asset worth investing in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of the things you can invest in, I think like learning good opening skills is important. It's like, I love conversation stuff. To me, that's the best. But this is by far, in terms of impact on my game, this is one of the most impactful things that I learned. That's why I'm so excited to talk about it. So
awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, thanks again for having me, and hopefully it won't be the last time. Talk to you guys soon.
Yep, cool.